When Keanu Reeves steps onto Stephen Colbert's stage, the audience expects the usual charm, thoughtful answers, and a quiet nod to his latest project. But Colbert has a different plan. Behind the smile and the cue cards, there's a subtle trap. He wants to provoke, shake Keanu's calm, and reveal something the world has never seen. Slowly, the tone shifts, the laughter fades, and the tension rises. Then, something happens, a response no one saw coming, a silence that says everything. Within minutes, the most famous talk show on TV becomes the scene of a live confrontation that leaves everyone stunned. Keanu Reeves kicked off Stephen Colbert's show after a heated clash, and what he revealed that night, no one could forget. Oh, and before we continue, tell us, what's the one thing you love most about Keanu Reeves? Let us know in the comments. The lights swept across the studio like searchlights scanning the night. Music pounded through the speakers, lifting the energy of a crowd already teetering on the edge of euphoria. Applause echoed like thunder, bouncing off walls plastered with posters and neon signs. The set buzzed with anticipation. Tonight's guest had arrived. Keanu Reeves stepped onto the stage with that quiet gravity only he could carry. Dressed in dark jeans, a plain black shirt, and a blazer that barely drew attention to itself, he moved like someone who had long stopped performing for approval. His eyes scanned the room without hurry, his smile faint, almost private. He waved once, then sat down. Backstage, Maggie stood behind the curtain, one hand resting on her hip, the other clutching her phone inside her coat pocket. Her expression didn't match the giddy atmosphere. She wasn't smiling, she was watching. Two producers leaned in close beside a monitor. "Tonight we get a reaction," one of them said. The other smirked. "He's too perfect, too calm. We cracked that tonight." Maggie caught every word. She didn't flinch. She pressed record on her phone and slid it deeper into her coat. On stage, Colbert opened the show with his usual charm. "We've got a special one tonight, folks," he said to the crowd. "This guy's not just a movie star, he's a philosopher with a black belt. The kind of guy who can quote Rumi while reloading a shotgun." The audience roared. Keanu gave a modest nod, smiling as if the praise wasn't about him. Colbert leaned in with a grin. "So Keanu, you're here with a new project. Something quiet this time, right? No explosions?" Keanu nodded once. "It's a documentary," he said between silences. "It's about faith, about how sometimes we find meaning not in noise, but in the spaces between sounds." "Intense," Colbert said, eyebrows raised. "What's intense is pretending everything's fine when it isn't," Keanu replied. "Silence isn't retreat. Sometimes it's how we survive." Colbert chuckled nervously. "Okay, wow. We're getting deep early tonight." Maggie shifted backstage. Her eyes were locked on Colbert's cue cards, and her expression darkened as she caught a few bolded keywords: memes, religion, cross necklace, monk. Keanu sat straighter in his chair, or maybe just stiffer. He was smiling, but his body had quieted, like an animal that just sensed a trap. "You spent 4 years on this documentary," Colbert said, flipping a card. "Alone, sometimes not speaking to anyone for days. That's pretty extreme." Keanu answered simply, "What's more extreme is never stopping to listen." Colbert laughed. It was automatic, a reflex. "You ever think maybe you're just too serious, man?" Keanu didn't flinch. "Seriousness isn't the absence of joy, it's the presence of purpose." The audience gave a few soft claps. Colbert flashed a grin, though something behind it cracked slightly. "I mean, look at you," he said, motioning to Keanu's posture. "You're like this modern monk, but with cooler boots. Are you always like this, or is this just for show?" "I'm not interested in shows," Keanu said. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was heavy. Colbert quickly pulled up another card, eager to pivot. "Well, tonight we're going to keep it light. People want to laugh, not go to therapy, right, folks?" He gestured to the crowd, who laughed on cue. Keanu didn't respond. His eyes had dropped just for a second to the cards in Colbert's hand, and something shifted. His legs crossed slowly. He leaned back into the chair, not in comfort, but in preparation. His smile faded, not with anger, but recognition. Backstage, Maggie's whisper barely escaped her lips. "They're pushing him, and he knows it." The audience kept laughing, unaware that the silence sitting beside Colbert wasn't passive, it was waiting. The screen behind them flickered to life with a bright pop. Colbert turned toward the audience, eyes gleaming. "So we pulled some things from the internet," he said, almost bouncing in his seat. "You guys know the meme economy loves this man. Let's take a look at what they've done with Keanu over the years." The audience cheered. Keanu's eyes stayed on the screen. The first image appeared, a grainy photo of him outside a hospital, alone, wearing a mask and hoodie. Someone had slapped a cartoon halo over his head, added the words "St. John Wick" in bubble letters, and distorted his face into a ridiculous filter. Laughter erupted. Colbert pointed at the screen, grinning. I mean, come on. Even when he's buying painkillers, he still looks like he's saving the world. The audience roared. Keanu's mouth didn't move. His hands rested quietly in his lap. The edges of his smile had vanished. Another image appeared, a shot from a red carpet event, zoomed in on the silver cross around his neck. Colbert leaned forward, voice playful. Now here's a hero of action who also goes to confession. The laughter this time was louder. A few people whistled. Someone shouted, "Preach, Keanu." He didn't flinch, just blinked slowly. Backstage, Maggie was frozen in place. Her jaw was clenched. She'd seen that cross before. She was the one who'd placed it in his hand after the funeral. She knew what it meant. Colbert, still riding the laughter, kept going. So be honest, Keanu, are you like a monk now, or just a really good actor pretending not to be pissed off? The room held its breath. Even Colbert seemed to realize he'd gone a little too far. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He didn't change his expression. The pain I've lived through, he said softly, taught me that silence also speaks. The laughter cut. People shifted in their seats. A few clapped, tentative, respectful. The rest looked confused. Colbert cleared his throat. He tried to smile, but it came out sideways. Okay. I deserve that, he said. I mean, I'm just trying to keep things fun here. You're kind of like walking poetry. I don't know what to do with that. Keanu gave a small nod. Maybe just listen, he said. Jimmy chuckled nervously, glancing again at the cards. He wasn't laughing anymore. So, he continued, I also found a tweet that said, and I quote, Keanu Reeves is what would happen if empathy had a six-pack. You think that's fair? I don't think empathy needs muscles, Keanu said. It needs presence. Jimmy set the card down. Man, I swear, you always been like this. Keanu looked directly at him. You mean not laughing when the pain isn't mine? The audience fell into a strange silence, not awkward, but tight, charged. A few people in the front row stopped smiling. Jimmy exhaled, trying to pivot, lifting his arms like a conductor redirecting a symphony. Well, we're going to shake things up. Let's play a little game, shall we? The screen behind them blinked again. A title appeared in big, bubbly letters. True or false, Keanu edition. Jimmy turned back to the camera. Here's how it works, he said. We show a story. Keanu tells us if it's real or just internet nonsense. He looked to Keanu, grinning wide. Sound good? Keanu didn't move. Then he said slowly, This isn't why I came here. Jimmy blinked. Sorry, what? Keanu shifted slightly in his chair, his tone unchanging. This interview has become a spectacle. I'm not here to play a part. A few audience members clapped quietly. Others looked around, unsure. Jimmy forced a smile. Man, you really take this stuff seriously. Keanu leaned forward just slightly, voice calm, eyes steady. And maybe you need to feel something real. The words landed like weight dropped in a still pool. Jimmy blinked twice, caught off guard. The grin had vanished. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Backstage, the camera assistant glanced at the control booth. Inside, the director whispered to someone, voice tight. He's flipping it, she said. Keanu's flipping the room. On stage, Jimmy sat frozen, one hand still on the card, the other resting on his knee. Around them, the laughter had vanished completely. In its place was something else, something no one in the room had planned for. For a few seconds, Jimmy said nothing. He just stared at Keanu, eyes darting as if searching for a punchline that had slipped through the cracks. But there was no laughter to rescue him this time. Only the studio lights humming above and the stillness of an audience suddenly unsure of what show they were watching. Then Keanu spoke. My sister died of leukemia, he said quietly. I was 23. I spent 2 years sleeping on a hospital floor. No one moved. My daughter was stillborn. Her mother and I buried her on a rainy afternoon in the Hollywood Hills. We named her Ava. A breath caught somewhere in the audience. My best friend crashed into a tree going 90 miles per hour. The car exploded. I was supposed to be with him that night. Jimmy shifted in his seat, eyes wide. He hadn't asked for any of this. He had no response ready. I chose silence, Keanu continued. Not because I had nothing to say, but because everything I could say felt small. Backstage, Maggie covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes were locked on Keanu, glistening. "People ask me why I'm quiet," he said. "Why I don't fight back. It's because I've already fought through the worst kind of noise." Jimmy cleared his throat. "Look, man, I didn't mean to. I was just trying to lighten the mood a little." Keanu's eyes didn't leave his. "And sometimes humor is a shield, I get that. But when you turn someone's grief into a guessing game, what are you really doing?" Jimmy blinked slowly. Then he smiled, too widely. "Well, let's get back to the fun, huh?" he said, gesturing at the screen again. "Let's not get too dark." A new slide appeared. Which of these Keanu stories is true? Photos and headlines flashed in bright colors. Keanu buys ice cream for entire crew. Keanu secretly funds cancer hospitals. Keanu eats lunch alone in the park. Jimmy clapped his hands together. "Okay, pick the true story, Keanu." Keanu didn't even look at the screen. "This isn't a game," he said. "And this isn't the place." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sharp, like something had just cracked in the air. A low murmur ran through the audience. Some people were still smiling, unsure. Others began shifting in their seats, a little less comfortable now. Jimmy tried again, this time with an edge in his voice. "You know, you take everything so damn seriously. Maybe that's your problem. Maybe you need to lighten up." Keanu didn't blink. He leaned in, voice steady. "And maybe you need to feel something real." Jimmy's expression flickered, and for the first time all night, the mask slipped just a little. Behind the scenes, the director leaned forward. "He's losing control," she whispered. "Keanu's turning the whole thing on him." On stage, Jimmy sat frozen, hands limp in his lap. His smile had faded completely now. Around him, the energy of the room had shifted, and it wasn't coming back. The pause stretched too long. Jimmy's jaw clenched as he adjusted his position in the chair. His fingers tapped twice on the armrest. Then he laughed, short, forced, sharp. "You act like you're better than everyone," he said, louder than before. "Like whispering and looking at the floor makes you holy. That's not humility, Keanu. That's arrogance dressed up as depth." A stunned hush fell over the room. Keanu didn't flinch. "It's not arrogant to speak softly," he replied, "but it is arrogant to twist pain into entertainment for the sake of a clip that'll go viral." Jimmy leaned forward, pointing now, his voice rising. "You, Keanu." The words landed with the weight of a brick through glass. Gasps rippled through the audience. Someone in the back said, "Wha?" A few phones lifted in the air, recording without hesitation. The room froze, lights, cameras, sound, all caught in a moment that had just crossed a line no one expected. Keanu didn't react. His eyes stayed fixed on Jimmy, unblinking. Behind the curtain, Maggie's breath caught. She stepped forward, halfway between backstage and the edge of the spotlight. She didn't move beyond it, but her entire body was tense, as if waiting for the moment she'd have to step in. Jimmy blinked rapidly, like he just realized what he'd said. The anger drained from his face, replaced by something closer to fear. But Keanu didn't rise, didn't raise his voice, didn't give the moment the chaos it begged for. Instead, he leaned in slowly, calm as ever, his voice like stone wrapped in velvet. "You said in an interview once," he began, "that your father left when you were young, that you were afraid people would see you as weak." Jimmy's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Keanu's voice stayed quiet. "And now you stand here mocking someone for their grief, for their silence, for their faith. But I see what this is. You know exactly what it's like to be ridiculed." The audience was completely silent, not a cough, not a rustle, just breath and attention. Keanu held Jimmy's gaze. "And tonight, you became the man who once made you feel small." Jimmy blinked once, slowly. His hands dropped to his lap. In the crowd, someone started clapping, then another and another. It wasn't loud, but it was steady, real, like the beginning of a wave no one had asked for, but everyone felt coming. Backstage, Maggie's eyes welled with tears. She didn't wipe them. She just kept watching, her lips pressed together. On stage, Jimmy tried to smile, but his mouth wouldn't quite cooperate. His hand reached for his coffee mug, but his fingers knocked it instead. The canister tipped, water spilled across the desk and down to the floor, gliding toward the edge of the stage. The moment hung there, not as a dramatic finale, but as something quieter, something irreversible. He tried to gather himself, to pull the reins back, but the show was no longer his. The mug clattered as it rolled off the edge of the table, spilling the last of its contents onto the floor. Jimmy didn't move to catch it. He stared down, jaw clenched, shoulders square, but his eyes had lost their anchor. Across from him, Keanu sat with a calm that no longer looked passive. It looked earned. "I read that interview you gave," he said quietly, just loud enough for Jimmy to hear, but clear enough for the audience to feel it. "The one where you said being called weak was worse than being called cruel." Jimmy didn't answer. His breathing had quickened. Keanu leaned forward again, his voice steady. "You said that when your dad left, the silence in your house was worse than the shouting, that you learned to be loud just so no one would hear how scared you were." Something broke in Jimmy's face, just slightly, like a window cracking before it shatters. "You know what it feels like to be laughed at," Keanu said. "To be doubted, to be questioned for how you feel. And yet, here you are, making someone else the punchline." The audience sat frozen. In the silence that followed, it was no longer uncertain. It was a silence of reckoning. "You turned into the thing that used to hurt you," Keanu said. There was no anger in his voice, just truth, plain, unflinching. For a moment, Jimmy didn't speak. His throat tightened visibly. Then he gave a short laugh, dry, defensive. "You think you know me?" he asked. But the strength behind the question wasn't there. Keanu didn't move. "No, I just know what pain does to people." Someone in the audience clapped. Once. A second joined. Then, like a ripple moving through still water, more followed. Cameras caught the moment as it grew, applause spreading slowly. Not out of spectacle, but recognition. Jimmy looked out at the crowd, stunned. He wasn't used to being the one under the light without control. Not like this. Not when it was real. Backstage, Maggie watched, with tears slipping down her cheek. She didn't wipe them. She just breathed in slowly, her hand pressed lightly to her heart. On stage, Jimmy leaned forward, elbows on the desk now, head low. His words came out quieter this time. "I didn't mean for it to go like this." "I know," Keanu replied. "But it did." The moment stretched, raw and unpolished. Then, without another word, Jimmy shoved the water-soaked cue cards to the side. His hand trembled. The pages stuck together in a mess of soggy ink and silence. And just like that, the set didn't feel like a studio anymore. It felt like a mirror. No one moved. The set lights kept glowing. The cameras kept rolling. But something fundamental had shifted in the room. Jimmy sat still, eyes down, surrounded by the mess of water and paper. But he was no longer the center of the scene. Keanu rose from his chair. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't slam anything or storm off. He stood the same way he had entered, quietly, with purpose. The weight of the moment traveled with him as he turned toward the audience. Every eye followed. A security guard near the side of the stage began to step forward, unsure. Maggie reached out from the wings and gently placed a hand on the man's arm. "Let him go," she said, "but on his terms." Keanu paused near the edge of the stage. He looked at the crowd, not scanning, not smiling for applause. He simply saw them, all of them. "Thank you for listening," he said. "Not to me, but to what matters." The room remained silent for half a second. Then the audience rose to their feet in waves, hands coming together in a slow, rising ovation that didn't sound like celebration. It sounded like acknowledgement. Jimmy stayed seated. He didn't look up. Keanu didn't wait for a cue or music. He walked off the stage the same way he had lived most of his life, unannounced, unhurried, and unshaken. The clip exploded online within hours. Keanu walks off Kimmel after tense exchange. Audience turns on Jimmy after painful misfire. Reeves delivers quiet masterclass in grace under pressure. News anchors discussed it. Comment sections filled with words like respect, dignity. And finally someone said it. The moment wasn't about drama anymore. It had become something else entirely, something real. Outside the studio, under the soft spill of streetlights, Maggie handed Keanu his phone. "You should see this," she said. He looked down. The screen was still lit. A video of his quiet stand had already passed 1 million views. It was still climbing, faster with each blink. He stared at it for a moment, then let out a small breath through his nose. Not quite a laugh, but something close. "Maybe," he said. "They're finally listening." He slipped the phone into his pocket. The night air moved gently around them, quiet, open. Then he walked away from the building, into the dark, into the world, into whatever would come next. Thank you for watching. If the story warms your heart, subscribe to the channel and click the screen for more inspirational stories of resilience, compassion, and hope.